Yes, I would like to say welcome to Mikael Kvium. Yeah.
Yes, and it's so nice you're here with me. Otherwise, I would be very nervous.
Yes, actually, I'm a psychiatrist. Yes.
Shall we take a session right now?
Yes, but with audience. Yes.
Okay, yeah. That's okay with me.
I have to admit, modestly, that I'm rather well prepared. I was in Denmark this weekend and bought me a notebook, a Mikael Kvium notebook, because, as it was said, there's also a big installment at Arken outside Copenhagen. It's very much of the same universe. Yes. I read you have been interviewed in the catalogue by Karsten Jensen, rather well-known author in Norway too, where you say, I don't make narratives in my pictures, I make performances. You have to explain. Yeah.
In fact, there's a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, it's obvious figurative works I work with. But narrative can be every kind of images that is telling a story. That can be just a painting of a forest. That's narrative too, because it's telling about the forest. But when I use this explanation, performative, is because I, in fact, kind of make my own actors, put them on the stage. In my case, the stage is normally my canvases, and I make them perform something very specific that I want to open up something, but I don't want it to be too clear to understand. And very often it is things, very normal things. It could be an orange, an egg, a lemon. It could be there's a lemon. It could be sunglasses. It could be a T-shirt. There's very few elements that we all know. It's very rare I use something that we don't know. And I put these things together, very often in a slightly different way of how we normally see it, because when we normally see it, we don't see it. We simply don't see it. I mean, probably it's 2 years since we last were thinking about I'm looking at a T-shirt. A T-shirt's just a T-shirt, then it disappears. And of course, I've got a reason for that, because I want to tell a story about our blindness, our system, the way our brain functions, that something, very often things that we as a society also want to close our eyes for. Those things I want to put up on the stage. And I can do that in very simple ways. And like an author, have to put words together in a specific way for us to recognize something. Because a journalist uses exactly the same kind of words, the same amount of words, I guess. So in fact, it is to link those things together to open up a very closed eye or a very closed ear.
So in a way, reminding us of reality, could you say that?
Oh yes, yeah. Very much so. But not the reality that we are taught to know.
No. We will discuss to and fro, but when I entered this fantastic new gallery, I saw a book by Egon Schiele upstairs. I know you are inspired by Goya, etc., but Schiele, he made the short time he lived, very often some distorted characters, very often naked, because he wanted to show the naked truth in a way, and they were in horrifying positions. I mean, I will not compare it to Schiele, but these characters, they are a bit baroque. They're not necessarily very beautiful.
No.
Why do the men all have hanging tits, for example?
Because we do have.
And in a way, there are also destroyed, some like arms, etc. Is this a part of reminding us, as we say, or try to do something with our blindness?
Basically, it was, I mean, a way. I mean, I'm always the first audience seeing my things, and when it becomes invisible immediately, there's something wrong. I had to do something. I have to battle with a world that is overflooded with images, very, very frightening images. Every evening on the news, we see very frightening. That's not bodies we normally see, because that's limbs laying around in Israel, it's limbs in Iraq after bombs, and we don't see it. And that's scary, because what we are looking at is news. It's nice having a cup of coffee and enjoying that at least we're not sitting in that area of the world. That is how we react. We are, in fact, amused about those horrifying things we see. For me, I am simply low practical by trying to change the body so much that we, in fact, recognize it as a body. That means that, I mean, it's not that far away from a normal body, but I change a little bit of it all the time. That means that I don't bring in, I think Schiele, in fact, had some models. Then he was transforming them in his head, and with his eye and the paper in front of him. But I'm simply trying to remember how a body is. That means that I also have to remember body to body. I mean, I have to remember how it feels to have an arm. And of course, there comes some different language out. And for many years, I couldn't figure out if it was right and wrong or wrong. So every second painting went wrong. The only thing I can see is that suddenly it fits into the painting. It looks right. It also looks right to that feeling I want to explain. It can be a horrifying feeling. It can also be a feeling of boredom. It can also be very often a feeling of stupidness. I mean, and I've done, I mean, a lot of shows talking about, I mean, fools, for instance, where I've for many years painting very small canvases with fools. Because basically, I think we're all fools.
And the book is upstairs.
Yeah.
I feel like an agent for this gallery, actually, telling about all the books they can sell. But I share for free a kind of trick for a psychotherapist, and that is say more about that. And say more about the feeling of painting an arm. I mean, actually, how do you do it?
Yeah, I know that sounds really tricky.
No, not necessarily.
I guess that it feels more or less the same way as when you're looking at the painting and you are feeling there's something wrong in that painting. There's something wrong. But, I mean, none of us wake up every morning and stand up in front of the mirror and say, yes, everything's right. It isn't.
And they should probably be treated, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. You can earn a lot of money there. Yeah. I think then we are in the wrong age, the wrong position. I mean, there can be in a wrong mood. I mean, you know much more about that than I do. I mean, what makes us coming into the wrong mood? I mean, even where we were supposed to be happy. What is making us? Is it our own illness or our own body that creates that bad feeling? Is it the society around that creates it? At the moment, I more or less feel that the whole situation, the world situation, makes us, in fact, all feel a little bit bad because so many things happen in the world that we, by history, know that's not going to go that well. I'm thinking about I mean, how, for instance, Europe is getting split again. Every time Europe gets more borders and more discussions, who is right and who is wrong, we get a war. And I mean, on the personal plan, I mean, the way we are living right now is getting more and more, we are all getting more and more egoistic. I was thinking this morning when we were still in Copenhagen that nobody is bicycling anymore with their ears open, not even their eyes, because they also have got the iPhone in front of them. They can't even enjoy bicycling in a beautiful city. They have to talk in the phone or write messages. That's pretty difficult when I can't imagine how it should be. The same, it's the same image in the cars. We are simply closing all our senses into our own private little closed space. And of course that changes our communication with other people, our feelings of other people, the feeling of being a part of something, a bigger society. And of course, those things have got an influence on our basic mood, but also on our politics, the way we are thinking about being a country, being European community, or you see it in America, it's more or less split up in two now, that very easily can end up in a new civil war. And instead of saying this is very wrong, because in fact it's very wrong for both parts having a civil war, we all know that. We don't go together and say we have to solve this problem. No, we can't do that because the others are the stupid ones. Simple as that.
Yeah. So in a way, you try to open up our eyes because you say it's too easy to get blind in this. And this is a way to try to open.
Yeah, maybe I'm very naive.
No.
But at least it makes some kind of discussion about. Both in me to understand, but and I have to have a lot of discussions in the studio. Why do I do this? Yeah. I mean, I think I could easily do something else that would make my life a little bit easier. But in fact, in the catalog too, I also say that I'm a little curious why artists today. Maybe they comment on what's going on in the world, then it's on the social medias, not in their artworks. At least not the good artists. And I don't know why, probably it's because that would put them in a problem in their situation, in their career. I don't know why. Probably I should ask some of them.
We are about the same age. And perhaps share some of the views of the world together. But what the researcher can do is also to say there are some data here. Actually, they have followed 14,000 American college students through some interviews from 1979 to 2010 or something like that. 14,000, measuring various things amongst what they call empathy. And that has been a decrease in 30 years of about 40%. That means losing interest for the other. Yeah. And other item was perspective taken, the capacity to take the other's perspective. Yeah. So, well, we are not dystopic, but there is a point here. It's something about losing interest of the other.
Scaring. Yeah. And I don't know why it happens, in fact, because, I mean, the way it looks, the world looks, it looks like there's a lot of things we should open our eyes to. There's a lot of things we have to take up, and we can't do that alone. I mean, so in fact, we should be curious about, there must be someone else. I have to have a discussion. How come you are thinking like that? But it seems like it's not that easy. And one of those things, I still think, is the very natural thing we have got. All human beings have got this brain that is shutting down if something is getting too much. Otherwise, we end up probably, or at least we are afraid of getting ill, of seeing too much. Maybe we are losing our illusions. That's a very scary thing, to lose your illusions, but probably we should. For instance, the illusion that the Western world is the top of the world. that the Western world, because we have done so many good things for the mankind, at least we say ourselves, we have at least made the same amount of bad things for mankind. And that's very hard to see, because then there is coming up a lot of discussions in all levels, inside ourselves, inside our relationships. And I've got no solution on that problem, but at least I think that we should face it and try to see what we find. And in fact, I say that in the beginning of the show, where I've got this entertainer standing dressed up in a foolish dress.
Yes, I can explain. When you enter the great art performance in Arken outside Copenhagen, in the first room it's a film with a clown introducing us to this era, telling about this Circus Europe. Yes.
Yes, and while he's making a very simple trick, he's having a lemon, a potato, and an egg laying in front of him, and then he makes these things while he's talking disappear. And then he's scraping off the layers of the lemon, and inside, of course, the potato is. And then he says to the audience, you have to cut off more, because you have to find more about how you are inside. And he keeps on saying that while he's putting off these layers, and ends up with the egg that he's breaking out in a glass. And just before he does it, you may not like what you see. And then he breaks the egg, and of course there's black oil falling out.
Stavanger.
Yeah. I didn't dare to say that. I had some self-control.
But I follow you for years, and you say the distortion, unbehagen, might be a part of yourself, or it might also come from contemporary society. In a way, this last work you have done is rather political, isn't it?
Yes, it is very much, but not political in the normal sense, by pointing someone out. Yeah. Because in fact, I think that it is, and even the catalogue is blue and red, the stripes are blue and red, because I think the poles are melting. Either you are very conservative or very socialistic, they will melt anyways. But you know, it was very strange starting thinking about what I should do at this show, because I never had that before. I thought, I'm gonna say something much more direct. I simply have to say what I see in the world. And of course, it was also due to what happened just around me. I mean, the whole situation in Europe with all the fugitives coming in, refugees, the way we were treating them. And Denmark was not a very good example of what to do. I mean, suddenly we couldn't share anything. We were afraid that all Arab people coming from these totally bombed cities were terrorists. And that was, I mean, you mentioned it, the minister who is supposed to take care of every foreigners coming into the country. She had a big celebration half a year ago, I guess, where she in this department simply had made a cake with a big number 50, and with the Danish flag down and lights and everything. It was 50 new laws to close the borders, to throw people back into poverty, to all the ugly things seen from a human perspective. And I mean, the way the discussions are in Denmark, but also I can see around the world, is really taking away those things that we, after a very bad time, the Second World War, learned that probably we should change the way we are talking about. We made the United Nations. We did a lot of things to prevent The European concept was made out of that too, that if we keep on having these very nationalistic borders, we'll end up having a war one more time between Germany, France, and Germany. And well, now England is out, obviously because they were scared too for something they don't really know for sure. I mean, now they've got problems because all the Polish people have left and nobody takes care of cleaning their homes, nobody is working in the factories, and I guess the most English people is probably drinking too much beer today that they can manage those hard jobs. I don't know.
So in a way, you say you are more explicit. Do you get reactions?
Most, I must say, of the reactions that in fact surprised me is that people agree. I get a lot of reactions also on social medias, and I think I've had one or two negative, probably because they feel a little bit guilty, because I don't point really someone out at the show, I point the situation out. And suddenly it probably comes a little bit closer to, because my basic idea is that we are all more or less the same, even men and women, even old and young. I mean, we're just human beings with some good sides, some bad sides. And why should people be so different from me? So I'm trying to find that kind of narrow little opening to where you can speak. That's one of the reasons. I mean, I'm not that much into abstract things in my paintings. I simply want to go directly through. A hand is a hand in my language. I would love to make a hand that didn't look like a hand, but then I lose this communication or this opening. And I think, in fact, there was one of the reviews that gave me, I mean, all the stars I could get and wrote very good about it. The only thing that he could mention was probably because he was working at a newspaper that probably didn't share my points like they saw it. So the only thing was that I shouldn't have had that discussion with Carsten Jensen, because he's not a person that is liked in those parts of.
He's not comme il faut. No.
No, I think that it goes much better when he comes out of Denmark.
But we take care of him here in Norway. We like him in Norway.
Sweden too, Germany too. I simply there's very few. What are they called in English? I don't know. In Danish, it's called samfundsrevser.
Yeah.
What is that in English?
Samfundsrevser. Yeah.
Yeah. Simply a person that is going directly into the flesh of your own culture. I mean, they are not well liked. I mean, probably not around the world. And he's very intelligent and he's very sharp. I mean, I think where he probably hit the point where he was persona non grata was when he simply wrote a big article in the biggest newspaper of Denmark, where he ended up saying to one of the politicians, the state minister, he said, "You are dumb." Probably that wasn't that polite. You're not supposed to talk like that, but probably he was right. Then he ended up like the chef of NATO later on, so it didn't help telling him he was stupid.
Henrik Ibsen wrote Enemy of the People. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those daring to tell, yes.
Yeah.
In this show in Denmark, a major work is Tourists on the Beach with boat refugees. But in another room is a boat, a rubber boat. It's an installation with a pile of parleurs from Danish to German and Norwegian to Italian, etc., etc. I don't like to ask artists to explain their work, but I was curious what happened to the language. It's a kind of babble we ended up in.
Well, I'm so simple, you can just ask me.
Yeah. Well, I ask you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had, in fact, very much problems with those two ideas because they were next door to each other. So I had to be very precise. The idea making a big, almost like a cinema, a very huge painting just of a scenery, the scenery that we all know. Just a southern nice beach with the furniture, the tourists on the beach, and the waves in the middle of the summer heat, and then just these confusing things. Just out in the last wave is coming in, the boats with refugees, and one of them has fallen out. And there's very few tourists on the beach, and they are just standing, looking. They're just looking at this. There's no reaction like they would run out and help, and that's in fact what happens. And to double this up, I made a very big kind of bench that is formed like a huge Danish sausage. It's red and blue. It's not only red, because then it would be too direct, with the pattern of some animal-like system. And the legs on that is casted legs of pigs in bronze. And of course, people sitting on that bench as passive as the people on the bench. So I get this meta show. Behind of this bench, there's space for a lot of people, and there is people standing looking at those that's sitting on the bench, not doing something, and they are laughing at the people sitting on the bench, not understanding that in fact they are part of the show suddenly. And the people on the bench are sitting looking at these funny tourists in the image, just standing looking at this. That's how we are functioning.
Actually sitting on a danske pølse, yes?
Yes.
We are not going to change topic, Mikael, but we are not. But more personally, to what extent would you say that you're doing self-portraits?
Well, in the beginning, it was just to find a body without features.
Yeah.
Those features that we normally is hiding behind. So I took away the hair. I also took away my own hair, but that was because it was falling off. I took away all those clothes that was linked to some kind of fashion or time. I used shoes, but then there was probably sitting on the hand. But at the same time, people started, of course, laughing because people also need escape route away from my painting, so they started finding it very funny. It was looking like me. So I tried all kinds of things to try not to make them look like me. Putting these bathing hats on to take away this hair, to kind of neutralize the hat in another way. And then after some years, I decided I can also start making self-portrait, because I can take it on my back to carry around with that. Because if people are so stupid, they think they are so much different from me. It's just funny. So I started, in fact, in the beginning of the 90s to, in fact, do, even in the late or the mid of the 80s, I started also doing some self-portraits. And later on, I mean, sometimes I really find it funny to put myself in now, because there's such a big tradition in art history. I mean, if you look at the Spanish painter Goya, for instance, he's interesting because even when he's painting some totally different persons, they also look like him. That's the reason why we can recognize a Goya painting so fast. That's simply because he's kind of having some of his physics into the painting. I mean, the only one he painted very, very beautiful, because he certainly didn't do that when he painted the royal family. But there was the Duchessa of Alba. he fell in love with her, and she ended up dying of that because the queen didn't like him mingling with this young lady, so she simply ended up disappearing. And in New York, there's a painting in the Hispanic American Museum way up in the north of New York, where there's this very iconic painting where she is standing on a beach, and she has written Goya in the sand just after she disappeared. That was too obvious. And Rembrandt, you can also see his physics going into all the bodies somehow. I don't know why. I've been studying that a lot of times. The only
Can I
way
comment a bit on
Yeah.
Rembrandt and self-portrait?
Yeah.
Because it interests me. Because I ask about self-portrait because I think a self-portrait is not necessarily a portrait of yourself. It's a portrait, a kind of the self in a contemporary culture. So today we make fragmented self-portraits because we feel fragmentation. I think Rembrandt was one of the first psychologists in painting, like Shakespeare was in literature. It was not God, it was the human nature. So he made, I think, 72 paintings or something of himself. And he plays with different moods.
Oh, yeah.
Happy Rembrandt, sad Rembrandt, playful Rembrandt, Rembrandt as Paul, St. Paul, Rembrandt as poor, etc. So in a way, he investigates the modern mind, or the modern mind to come.
Yeah, which was pretty natural in those times because suddenly art became not something you did for the church, for the religion, but you did it for normal people, for the bourgeoisie of the country. And some new ideas was developed in the same time. And in fact, I had a beautiful experience with Rembrandt. Some very good curator in the Portrait Gallery or National Gallery of London simply hung up 2 portraits. One of them was he was 32, I guess, where he's still so arrogant. When you're 32, you're just an arrogant asshole. You don't believe that you're going to die. And he's sitting exactly like that, with a tiny little smile like Mona Lisa or something like that, looking at you with such a disrespect. In fact, such a joy of yourself. He's got a big hat on. He's dressed like an artist. He's dressed like a rich artist that he was. And 20 centimeters next to that, or 5 centimeters, they were very close, was hanging his last self-portrait, where he has lost everything. He has lost his career. He has lost his beloved son, Titus. He has lost 2 wives. He's lost his money. He's sitting at this poor man's house. Everything he does go directly to Amsterdam because he owes Amsterdam so much money. And he's just sitting, you know, when I tell about it, you all know that painting. He's sitting just with a piece of cloth around his long hair to keep it away from the paint. And he's just looking out at you. There's no smile. He knows everything. He has been through his life. There's no arrogance. There's no charm at all. He's simply looking at himself at the same time. He's looking at, what did I learn? For what reason should I go through this? I mean, it opens up for all of us if we're young and old or the same age. And in fact, I'm telling this, I think he was 62 or 63 when he died. And I'm 62 now. And when I saw these 2 pictures hanging next to each other, I was 32. And I was thinking in those days, wonder how I would look at myself when I'm 62, and I don't tell you. But I was shocked. It was the 20 centimeters so long as a life.
What makes a young boy decide to be an artist? You said it's easier ways in life.
Oh, yes, certainly. Well, I think that most of us is to make a choice is to take a lot of other choices away. It's not to choose this, it's in fact to take away something that's even worse. And I grew up after the Second World War in Denmark, in the province of Denmark, seeing the workers passing by every day, and I don't remember the first years, 5 or 8 years of my life as happy. There was no sunshine. I don't remember a sunny day. And I saw these workers passing by every day, dirty, without a smile, without any hope in their eyes. Even a small kid can see that in a split second. And then suddenly the 60s came, and my family could afford to buy a TV. And in that TV, we only had one station, and that one station was a public service station. That meant there was no advertising every second. And they also had to fulfill the idea of culture in a country without culture, almost. So we saw now and then big portraits of big artists. And I saw that, and that was the first door ever opening for, wow, grown-up people can also have a kind of life I can understand. I saw Yves Klein painting only blue paintings, using naked women bodies to paint with, and I was just, I think, ugh. I saw Picasso, a program where Picasso was explaining the idea of the line. And I understood it. He told, but listen, I don't know which body part it was, but I understood it immediately. He said, but look, an arm is not like a stick coming out. It's a form here, then there's a form here, then comes the form here, that's changing here. And he explained it in such a way, so I was drawing for days afterwards. To also, my hand had to understand that too. There was Christo, I also told you this afternoon, Christo, a grown-up man that was packing in huge things, mountains, buildings, Christo. And for me, that was opening a huge door, and I decided I want to be an artist. I didn't know at all what I should do, but I wanted to be an artist. So I went, of course, to the library, and in the province in those days, there wasn't that many art books, and there must have been somebody there that thought I was a crazy little boy, because I came every month and said, have you had new art books? And there I could see some patterns, some lines, not horizontal lines. I could exactly see what was the newest thing. But for me it was very interesting to see lines, and that's why I suddenly understood that Bacon, he had a line that was specific, and there was a lot of those artists down that line that I liked too. And there was other lines, from the whole Italian Renaissance painters, they had another line that was a clean, nice Renaissance art, a beautiful art that I understood, but I couldn't use it, because later on I simply understood it's because it was in fact only working with ideas. Hitler did that too. It was the beautiful body, the beautiful painting. It was, everything had to be beautiful, but to mention something that's beautiful, who is to decide what's beautiful? That we've got the problem. So I decided not to find that kind of beautifulness, but more like change the word beautiful into honestness, because at least that must be kind of beautiful. So, where did we come from? Now I'm almost on the moon.
I know it, yeah. Talking about the boy having kind of aesthetic revelation about beauty. But you know, also talking about virtues like honesty. Yeah. And it also links to, I think, your project here, something about dignity, something about honesty, something open up our eyes. Your eyes actually were open, you say. It was bad weather
they
in
can
Denmark
be
for
very
8 years,
close too.
yes.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
what happened to the weather in Denmark after you started to look at art?
It became sunny all the time, as you have seen.
But not joking about this, but here, this is another book. Actually, it's presented by, it's called Psykiatrifonden in Denmark. It's also a portrait about you, also with a kind of tough start. You're one of 8 children, and your mother experienced some serious problems.
Oh yes, and it's a strange story because I mean, my parents were new religious crazy people. They became Catholics, and I guess that they had a dream to feed the Catholic Church with a lot of boys and girls that could be nuns and priests and help all the world. It didn't go so well, but and in fact, the brothers and sisters before me, we were born after 1 year after each other, and there was a miscarriage just before me, and my mother was very tired, as I've been told, because of course I can't know that for sure. And under the birth, it goes wrong with me because she was very tired, and she's almost bleeding to death, and get one of these classical death experiences. You know, I mean, you can read about it. All of you guys know about it. You know that people that's dying coming out in the big lights and is experiencing. Some very fantastic things, and either you become very, very happy after these things coming back to Earth or to life, or you get totally scared. And I guess my mother got totally scared. I haven't ever had the full story. I can just, like a puzzle, together with my brothers and sisters, we can kind of make a story of those years that was after these reactions. And of course, that creates some kind of special position for me in the family, and especially a very strange relationship with my mother, always, because in fact she was both a very fantastic woman. She was very funny, she was very intelligent. She ended up almost being educated as a Protestant priest in the end of her life. But of course those things also probably, I don't know, because that you know more about, but of course I've also been reading a lot about those things. And in the beginning I got very afraid that, because I always felt apart from other persons. I saw something that other persons didn't react on. I could feel how they felt, or at least I put much more attention to how they felt, and that made some years very difficult for me to find out what is all this about. And it was the same time I was at the academy as a grown-up. I guess that a big percentage of young persons between 20 and 30, in fact, is in the same position, because before you were a teenager, and as a teenager just do what the other teenagers do. That's the first time in your life you have to question, who are you? In the art academy, I mean, there was, in those days, there was also a big demand that we had to know who we were. We had to explain what we wanted. We had to know. So in those days, that was tough, but I think I figured out who I was in the end. And figure out what happened. But since then, I mean, very often young people come to me especially after, because I didn't talk about that for years. I did to my family, but I thought that would be a door more for people not to look at my paintings. They would just say, he's kind of weird. I am, but they shouldn't have that key, but now they've got it.
It's good to listen to you. But you say, in a way, if I use my words, you had a kind of sensibility, a sensitivity for others. And you also had to work out who you think you were. But you had the gift of expressing yourself. I mean, it's a lot of lonely characters in these paintings. But when art is met, it's not loneliness, because it's a kind of meeting.
Oh, yes. That's also a little strange, but I mean, for me, these canvases is simulacrums. I mean, a canvas is just a stupid thing. In fact, just that we think this is a person is very stupid, because it is a piece of canvas with some glue on, with some white color on. Then I've been standing with a wooden stick with some pig sand on, putting some colors on it, and then we believe that this is a human being. And very often when it's rare, there's two persons there, but it's pretty rare I've got more than one person. Yeah. It's because in the end of the day, the way we learn really what life is about, that is not in a social context. I mean, we are born alone and we are dying alone. And we can't learn about the most inner feelings of other persons before we know our own. I think the limits, and that means art too. You will never understand more of a piece of art than you have understood inside yourself. There's probably some light blinking. You can probably, from that piece of art, can probably blink and say, you can learn more, you can learn more. That's the closest we can come. I mean, everyone can read a very complicated book. It doesn't mean that we understand it.
No. How important is it for you when you're painting or drawing or making art, that you know that we are in the other end of it?
Yeah, for me, it's very important. Yeah. Because I think that communication is a big part of it. The dialogue. Yeah. I mean, I'm having that can be stressful and that can be horrible, but I've got a beautiful dialogue normally with the things that's coming up. By thinking, by remembering, by putting things up either on a piece of paper or on a canvas. And then something is wrong there. Then I have to correct it. I don't even know why I think it's wrong, and I don't know why I can decide this looks much better. This dialogue probably makes a good painting. And in the end of that, I'm satisfied. That would be so stupid to paint it over and put it away, because, in fact, I've got something I can share with others. It can probably be because I'm not the most open person in the world in a normal day. That can probably be a kind of way to express something that is harder to do in a social system or social, what do you call it, relation, of course. And I don't know, because those questions we, as artists, are sitting discussing very often. I very often have got the same discussions with musicians, with writers, because in fact we know exactly what kind of feeling it is to make something new, to give it. And I normally envy musicians so much, because at least they are a part of this performing the thing. They can see what happens in the audience. I can't see anything. It's only my paintings that can see it, and they are so silent. But I can see what I see, and I think that's maybe it is. In fact, I think it is a human basic thing to communicate. I think there is a lot of persons, a lot of people that's so afraid of telling something they find important. That's because of the pressure from their surroundings, or their idea of the pressure of the surroundings. Because if they put it to the end, what would happen if you hated me after this? Nothing. I'll just hate you too. I mean, nothing happens. You won't chop off my head today. That probably would happen in other situations. But even that, if you really had something you needed to tell, then probably, and somebody has done, they have, paid with their head for saying that. So it must be something very basic in us.
And perhaps, I'm not making this too simple, but perhaps, and without romanticizing the artist, that you have the capacity to bring something into a form. You can give emotion, feelings, a form, and then you can look at your own forms and have this dialogue with you, but you can also give it to us.
Yeah.
And it might say something to me, giving form to something in me that is not formatted yet. I mean, that's part of art, I think. It's
probably the biggest part.
Yeah.
And in all arts, I think that, in fact, we are making those objects that we can start to understand that we can share something in common, but there's also differences.
But to what extent,
Yeah.
Michael, to what extent do you feel that you challenge yourself? I mean, so we're not making the same painting all over again. I mean, are you trying to investigate anything particular?
Yeah, but as older you get, as slower it comes.
Don't say that, no.
No, it will only get worse. No, I think that's the most frightening thing for an artist. That is that you can't move. And then there's the other thing that is simply, basically, it's because of due to lack of talent, lack of intelligence. That is not like you can re-event you all every year. And that is also a discussion artists have all the time. Should we jump more? Should we jump less? Should we, move together? Should we? And personally, have I kind of just accepted that there is something that I can't move away from. That would be because when I do it, sometimes I'm, for instance, testing out some art I love other ones do. And I think I'm always, of course, envying them. Oh, it could be so nice not to make figurative, performative art because I hate it. I want to make something totally abstract, totally simple. I don't even want to paint. I want to do anything else. And then I try it out and end up looking like those artists. Why not enjoying them and keep up the things you are doing? I think inspiration is another thing that, in fact, I can look at Arab art because that's so beautiful. And I think that, in fact, you can also open a door just to love something, let it in, and maybe somehow it influences you in the long term. But every time I'm trying to copy something, I want to go over there, then I end up like a bad copy of a good artist. That's the only thing I get out of that.
I think we should start to close up. Some final things you would like to say? I mean, it's an obvious red line in this. I mean, your project in Denmark with the Circus Europa, trying to find yourself, being sensitive, trying to open up our eyes, etc. Yeah, it links very well together, I think. Yeah. Some final remarks?
No, I think I've been talking all the time, so maybe you should do it.
I have actually been enjoying listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you.